seeing it.
Ooh, that's scary. Let me go back and do it again. Hold on. No, I'm disabled, Kyle.
I gotcha.
Thank you, sir. All right. Thank you kindly.
All right, welcome everybody to the Primary Sources and Teaching Online webinar series brought to you by the TPS Western Region at MSU Denver in partnership with the TPS Teachers Network. I'm Kyle Claybaugh, I'll be your host for tonight. I'm the project coordinator for the TPS Western Region. Keith Patterson and the host will be manning the chat, so reach out if you have any questions or comments. You can also use the raised hand tool in Zoom if you have something to share. For those of you who would like the professional development certificate for your participation, we will provide a link at the end to fill out a brief reflection and where we can send the certificate. The program tonight is titled Virtual Places and Primary Sources in the Classroom, HABS, and Google Arts and Culture. It's going to be presented by the Two Geeky Teachers, Laura Israelsen and Michelle Pearson. And with that, I'll hand it over to y'all.
Thanks, you guys. Welcome tonight. We are going to work through our presentation tonight so that you can get really an experience of primary sources in lots of different contexts. We're going to be working with the HABS, Hare, and Howell collection at the Library of Congress. We'll also be working with our Google Arts and Culture, and then come back to some STEM and STEAM ideas at the very end. So I'd like to go ahead and start. All of our resources are going to be here for you on this bit.ly. As Kyle did say, and the guys, we are Two Geeky Teachers. We get that name just because we tend to geek. And we love technology and primary sources. And that really is showcased tonight in a lot of the resources we're going to share with you. We're really looking at thinking about STEM and STEAM. I'm a middle school educator, Michelle Pearson, in the Adams 12 School District. I work with technology, social studies, and I am a historic preservationist as well. Laura, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Laura Israelsen, and right now I'm working as a digital coach in the Denver Public Schools, but my background's in libraries, and I've worked as a teacher librarian, but I'm very excited about technology and especially tonight's Google Arts and Culture to share with you.
So we're going to tag team back and forth a little bit, and we're going to start. You can get us online, and we'll be sharing these resources in the bit.ly. Laura's already put some of those in the chat box for you. We're also on Twitter, and we'll be sharing those later. Our goals really are to explore in depth the HABS collection, which is really HABS, Hare, and Howell. I'll explain those in just a few minutes. Look at how you can use Google Arts and Culture, dig in a little bit into that. We're going to look at a virtual field trip a bit, and then we're going to talk about STEAM and looking at a critical analysis sheet that was developed by the team here, along with architects and engineers and some people thinking about how do we bring this analysis process of STEM to art and to primary sources. And so we'll be doing that. So we hope that we're going to hit all of these. We'll have a natural break for questions. You can always put them in the chat box. Either Laura or I and the team will be answering them as best we can, and then we'll follow up at the end as well. So I'm going to start right here with this particular image. Really, if you've never heard of HABS, Howell, and Hare, these are three national endeavors. These are a national idea, a way to record our important engineering, our important building records in the country. It's actually a contest that takes place between engineers and architects across the country. They document our historic buildings and places of note, both with photography and also with measured drawings. You will also find lots of ancillary materials as well. The photography collections here and the measured drawings are extensive. And I'd like to take a look really quick at what this means for us. And then we're going to showcase a little bit how you can put them together into the classroom setting. So this right here is a very special place. This particular location is in Illinois, and it is one of the state courthouses that's in Illinois. I'm going to step out and we're going to take a look at it right now. This is going to take us to the Library of Congress. Often when you come to the Library of Congress, you'll come to the main page and it won't directly bring you to the HAL collection. And I'll show you in a little bit how you can find that. But this is the HABS and HAL. This means the Historic American Building Survey, which means this is a survey that looks at how buildings are made. And this is a cross-section. And for those of you who are librarians, you probably know of the Macaulay books and some of the others that show cross-sections of buildings. The HAB and HARE and HAL collection really showcase not only the elements of a building, but they showcase how they're built and the decorative design work that makes them architecturally or engineering special, which means they stand out, they make a difference. In this large contest that happens, which is sponsored by the National Park Service, architects across the country, usually students, graduate students, sometimes undergrads and others, will contribute a series of measured drawings that highlight a historic place. There's a vast collection of these. Some of the places you'll never recognize, some are more noticeable. When you come to a collection, you may actually find one sheet like you see here. This is organized up in the top right corner. What I'd like to do right now is show you a different way of organization so that you can get an overview. So I'm going to click and go to a gallery view. And when I go to that gallery view, it's going to bring up a series of images. And these images, you can see by a glance, have lots of different viewpoints. It may have a side viewpoint of the courthouse, a front viewpoint. It may have an interior drawing. It also may have elements that are showcased. For example, you can see if I click on this one right here, it's going to showcase the beautiful interior doors and decorative design work. The people that create these collections for this process actually work together in teams. The teams vary in size, and each person, architect, may actually take one element of this location to actually break it down. And when they do that, they then submit the entire collection for review for the contest by the National Park Service. Each collection that is with us in the National Collection at the Library of Congress has an overview sheet. The overview sheets can be very simple, like this one, that has just particular information, historical, architectural, or engineering background about the site that's been illustrated. But some of them are quite beautiful. They may be decorative with flowers, with design work. This collection in Hawaii is stunning with all the flowers and the beautiful animals. But you can also find these as a great research background point for background information. Often in these collections, it will give the significance of the historic site. This particular historic site I tripped across because it came up in a conversation, and the conversation had to do with how these are broken down. And you can see on this particular element, it shows the building, the landscape structures with the different trees and bushes, and then also a plot map and a list of important plant materials. It's important to note that when you are doing architectural drawings like this, it may not be just the building. It actually can include landscape items. It can include cross sections, views from above or below, and those are all connected. So really when you look at one building, make sure you're not looking at just one page. You're zooming in to see what's there, and make sure that you're going into the gallery view so that you can see everything that's available for that building, because it may give you some beautiful ideas of what to use with kids in the classroom. For example, this one, you can see these beautiful steps, the front of the building, the rotunda here. Just to let you know, Abraham Lincoln stood right at these front doors on these steps for this building to give a speech just after the Lincoln-Douglas debates. This particular building has some history for here in Colorado. Our state leader of History Colorado, our architect Steve Turner, was one of the contributors to this particular collection. Was when he was in grad school. He drew one of these pictures, and that's why we know a bit of the history. He participated in developing this project, which then won the HABS Award and was placed into the Library of Congress. So let's look and see how it can be used with kids. So I'm going to come back here to our presentation, and I want to go on to this next piece. We have grouped the HABS into a thought process for kids that really gives you a deck of ideas or a group of ideas that can go together. In here, this particular one, we've talked about Martin Luther King. This is a collection that is about Martin Luther King and his historic site. If you were to go to the Martin Luther King historic home right here, you could click on this link and it will take you to the overview of the Martin Luther King site. You'll see that it doesn't have just his house, because the Martin Luther King National Historic Site includes his house plus Ebenezer Baptist Church, his neighborhood, and other important elements. The history of Martin Luther King and the importance of this neighborhood is listed on the front sheet right here. So we've included that here as a reference. But then we've also included interior photos. The interior photos are also included in the survey. It's not just about drawings. It's also about these beautiful photos that were taken during the time period. You can zoom them in to take a look at what this would have been like when the HABS was created. Understand that sometimes the HABS are created much later than the significance of the important event. But this interior photo is much like this church would have looked like when Martin Luther King was there. So in going back, we can also take a look at how we connected to other ways. We connected to an analysis of a book that has won multiple awards called Martin's Big Words. And you could have students not only read the picture book, but then look at the analysis of what that book meant in history, what it was to fiction and nonfiction in reading and analysis. And you can compare it to the primary sources that are here in the HABS collection, as well as the photographs. And then finally in this corner is a Google user gallery, and Laura's going to jump in and talk about that a little more as we proceed forward. I wanted to take just a moment though and show you a couple others that we've done. You'll see this one right here is on the Paul Revere House. It connects a wonderful book, if you don't know it, called The Colonial Voices, Hear Them Speak, which gives a lens perspective from lots of different viewpoints from people during the colonial time period of the revolutionary and pre-revolutionary period. We have a Paul Revere House link here that students could go out to and actually take a virtual look at the Paul Revere House. And then here's some more about Paul Revere that gives some etchings through Google and a collection of Paul Revere items. And then finally, here's the HABS drawing. I actually love this particular HABS drawing of the Paul Revere House because it's a cross section again, and you can see what Paul Revere's house looked like from the side. You don't necessarily have to look at all of these other elements that are here, but students will be naturally drawn to take a look at what it meant to live in Paul Revere's house. And so that's pretty cool. And it's a lot of fun to take a glance at. Now, you can do this in lots of different ways as well. Let's take a look at another way that you can take a look at the environment and our historic places. Here in Colorado, we have images of Mesa Verde that were included in a HABS and HAL collection, measured drawings of the spruce tree that shows the whole layout, one of the most visited places in Mesa Verde, a beautiful Google expedition of Mesa Verde, and then finally a picture book about a father and son relationship of this region. And then we'll go on one more time. If you know the Brooklyn Bridge, this is a great one to investigate. Again, we pulled out some engineering drawings to show how this bridge was made over the streets and over the river. And then we give some stories about 21 elephants, and we visit it using Google Street View to go actually walk across or drive across, as you want to say it, with the Google Street View. And then finally, we give a hidden perspective, and that perspective is of women in STEM and how women contributed to this effort. So these types of collections using drawings can actually give another perspective into the use of primary sources, but bring in a very important element, and that is the tie to place. We know that places touch our students tremendously and that places are meaningful, but sometimes drawings may be even more meaningful to a student when they can dig into them and investigate them. And that's a really neat thing to do. I have to say, as a shortcut of a teacher, some of these drawings are so intensely beautiful that we actually print them out in 8.5 by 11 so our students can read them and can color them and put them into interactive notebooks, which ends up being a great reference point, not only for background information, but for the tie to engineering and STEM, and what these historic places don't only offer in the historic context of America, but the built America as well. So now I'm going to exit out of screen share and answer a few questions if you've got some. I'm going to do this so Laura can jump us into Google Arts and Culture. So I'm going to turn that over to you, Laura, and I'm going to take a quick glance at chat while you start. Are there any questions that stood out, Laura, while you were taking a look at that?
It seemed like people were just sharing resources and kind of taking it all in.
Great, not a problem. So I will go ahead and go back and answer questions as you go forward. So Laura, you're on. Arts and Culture, here we go.
So I love Google Arts and Culture, but we are really throwing an hour's worth or 2 hours worth of information at you, so strap in. But I'm going to start with a 1-minute video just to give you a high overview of what Google Arts and Culture is about. Oh, maybe not. Let's try it.
Inspiration is spread around the globe, across space and time, in the places we love, and with the people of our past. Art has changed the way we see the world and the way we see each other. We started with simple tools for food and fire, and then carved statues of myths and heroes. We built monuments to last forever. There is so much to see, learn, and experience. With the Google Arts and Culture app, you can immerse yourself in 360-degree views using Google Cardboard. Zoom in to reveal the secrets of a masterpiece. Discover inspirational moments, iconic people, and artistic wonders. Search by time or even color. Save your favorites and share them with the world. Explore more with Google Arts and Culture. Download the app and get inspired every day. Where will you start?
So they talked a little bit about the app there, but we really want it, but everything that you can find on the website. So we use this all the time with our students. So that gave you a little bit of an overview, but I want to go live and do a little tour around Google Arts and Culture. And it changes. It's something new every day. Yesterday at the very beginning, here's the home page. And it's a good idea to kind of, if you ever get lost, which is very easy, you just click back to the home page and it's a good place to start. It's a good tip to give to students. But yesterday, this section on Vermeer was a section on 10 different museums. So it's something every day that's a little bit different. This is the home page, and if you start to scroll down and explore, you can find 2,000 museums. You can step inside. They've put a lot of links on the front page to kind of get you to think about what's available and what's there. You can look at things on your phone. You can go around the world and spot different artwork, go into music and art. Every day they have a different little quiz about art or an artifact. They do the Cultural 5. The thing I like about the Cultural 5 is there's usually a science, an engineering, or a technology feature. So today's feature happens to be about this dinosaur. And they take you right in.
A new dinosaur is coming to Halls, the American Museum.
And they'll take you on a little expedition, and you can go in and explore that some more. There's some art at home, like recreate this. So there's options for students and things for them to do. Places to see. They have these street tours that you can go on, and it's with the Google Street View. So if you go in, you can explore, you can, if you hit the heart, you can like this, and we'll talk about where that goes. So I could even click that, but they will kind of guide you, but they'll start, so it's that Google Map tour. You can also explore on your own or let that go automatically. But all of these tours, so all kinds of tours and views are available to you. So anything that Google's done there, they're kind of putting back out here on the Google Arts and Culture. And it's a little bit amazing with what they are offering. So we can keep going. There's sites. I can go, if I want to go to Paris, I can look at color-coded art. I mean, just imagine getting into any of these. Just, it's like spending the day in a museum, right? And I think that's what I love about this, is even just from this front page, I can walk through and get some ideas, see some exhibits, and really broaden my horizons, right? I can explore in high definition, and I like these Google Ads, the capability of really zooming in right down to the brush stroke. So if you go in, they've got some, you can keep zooming, and you can get right, like imagine taking kids right to the arts, right down to the brush stroke, and really examining some of these things that are going on. So it's amazing what's there and what's available in Google Arts and Culture. Let's see, there's even some more brush strokes, some guided tours of some different museums around the world. So this kind of gives you an idea of what's on the front page. So that's the home page. If I go to explore, I can explore by highlights, by categories, by historical figures, by events. They talked about just exploring by time and color. So think about all the museums around the world, and if you just go into one museum, you're kind of stuck with whatever they've been able to curate, which can be amazing, but Google Arts and Culture brings all of those together, and can, so you can see one exhibit around one topic and really be able to see pieces from all kinds of different exhibits. You can go into a 360-degree view, into the street view. If I go over here to nearby, Google Arts and Culture will tell me the museums that are close to me. And I can go, what a great tool, right? If I'm in a different city, or even sometimes I don't realize what's close to me, places that I live, and I can go there, or I can click here and go straight to the website. So they've just really thought of everything. I can go into favorites, and in my favorites, these are items that I have clicked. I've hit that little heart like I showed you. I really like the stories. The stories are exhibits where they bring all different kinds of paintings, artifacts, information all together to tell a story. It's not just what's available in one museum. And then these are different things that I have liked, but I can also go into my gallery. So imagine having your students create their own gallery. So I have a gallery I've started with the national parks, and I've got some paintings there. And also you'll see that I'm a little bit of a Van Gogh fan. So I've started a gallery with Van Gogh. We have also bookmarked some places for you that we really like. It might make it a little bit easier. So that's kind of an overview of the site. But if you go into our presentation and you can click on places, it will take you straight to the places. So if I'm studying Italy with my students, I can click on Italy. I can give them the link. I can add this to my favorites, or they can. There are 169 collections. I can look through different museums in Italy, imagine. I can go through the stories. So I really have a lot of options. There are 81,000 items in Italy, and I can, that have been curated in Google Arts and Culture. I can organize them by popularity, but I can also organize them in a timeline. So I can go back and forth on this timeline, and what a great way to look through history and really see, you know, differences in decades and what's going on with that. I can also go on virtual field trips. This is something we like, and Google Arts and Culture, they have all kinds of different things for virtual field trips. You can go, that you could call a virtual field trip, but this one, when you go in, if you choose one of their paintings or one of their field trips, if I go in here, I get this tool that takes me like right down to, I can see the canvas, right? I can get right in and see what's going on. It's kind of amazing. I can get the link again, some information, but I can go to the street view. So these are their virtual tours, but I see exactly where this painting is hanging. I can walk around in the museum. I can see what's hanging in the same room, get an idea. I can click down here even and go to different exhibits in the museum. So that's what they're talking about when they go on virtual field trips, to be able to go right there. The natural history in Google Arts and Culture, fantastic. So think about this in terms of your science and through your science lens, right? So again, they've archived and curated information and collections from natural history museums from all over the world. So if you click on any of these, you really get to go in and see this exhibit and how it looks at a museum. So, but they've started to add some different amazing things too. These, if you go in, you can read you can see the pictures and read what the museums have at their exhibits. Imagine, you know, bringing this right to your students. They've started the 360-degree video, and you may have seen that under the Explore, but I'm just going to show you just a little bit. They've started bringing some of these to life and adding some information. So if you click on these, they've got underwater creatures and dinosaurs and all kinds of information, all kinds of topics. I'll let them talk for just a second.
Welcome to the world-renowned Museum für Naturkunde in Berlin. You are now standing in the Dinosaur Hall. Look around. In Jurassic times, these all shared the same ecosystem.
The thing I can do, because it's a 360-degree video, so this is a video, but I can move it around, right?
So that they could feed
I can see what else is in the room and kind of explore while she's talking.
Were only accessible to one of the tallest dinosaurs that ever lived, Giraffa Titan. But
then they started bringing them to life.
Even like the largest animals that live on land today.
So they've really taken AR and taken it to the next level, right? So now you have the dinosaur walking through the museum. And then the spotlight stories. These are all kinds of topics and stories where they've brought collections together from different museums around a spotlight, around a topic that's of interest. You can also go in and explore historical figures. If there's, and I can go alphabetically, I can go by time. Once I go in and click on these figures, again, I've got a link. Again, I can favorite this into my gallery. I can read some information. Here I have Abe Lincoln. I have 19 stories, and remember, every story has multiple artifacts in it. I have almost 1,000 items organized by popularity or organized by timeline. Kind of incredible what's there for people. Same thing for events. I can go into historical events. Maybe I wanted to give some more information around the Holocaust. These are primary sources. These are museum curated information. So a great way for students to study. It's a trusted source of information, which we like to give to kids, right? and help them to maybe do some inquiry and study things out for themselves to just go into a topic like this. There's also some more virtual experiences there. We've also, so the transfer from art to science and technology and engineering and math is such an easy bridge to cross and an easy way to add art to those topics. So in Google Arts and Culture, they've got tons of information. Here's just a little bit that we found around women in STEM. Look at these exhibits. I mean, these are really museum quality exhibits that they have brought in you can take students back in time and really study things out.
On a star-filled night in 1847, a young American...
They've got some tours like that. It's just kind of amazing what's available. Maybe a little nanotechnology, all kinds of science exhibits. You've seen some of that. How are we comparing things then and now? And they just do an amazing job with these exhibits. They're very interactive. It really is like taking your students to a museum. Madame Curie, imagine going through her life and being able to see all of the images and the stories and the pictures and follow her through primary sources, but it's all curated and finished and beautiful for you, right? So students can actually start to create their own galleries and do tours themselves of what they find in Google Arts and Culture. So those are some of the ideas that we have around Google Arts and Culture, and we just think that Google Arts and Culture has so much to offer in terms of primary sources and working with students and the information that's there. So I'm going to turn this back over to you, Michelle, unless we have questions. Or...
Well, no, it's been really quiet because I think everybody's been following what you've been working with, Laura, in it. We've just been sharing a couple ideas in search and talking about that. One thing I want to really stress with this too is Google is really interdisciplinary in how they curate these items. So if you have a challenge in finding something that is music related or science related, Google can really help you with this. Laura, we did have one question. If there's a master list of people, or if you should just search by the item or term, and I think really you just search by that item or term, right? In looking there, but
so often, yeah, it changes so often. You just kind of, yeah. And I have yet to find something that a topic that I can't find anything on yet. So.
And I know, I will tell you, this is really engaging for little guys too. If the dinosaur video alone does not show you, that would get any little guy in it. But I think there's also something that you need to know in regards to this. It is just like the Library of Congress, an absolute Pandora's box. Once you get into it, you're going to get in it and you'll find your ways to create your galleries and to highlight and love the things and your favorites the best. Laura, is there any way that you have to suggest that? Because I know you've been in Pandora's box with this, definitely.
I think this is why we actually link some things here that could help you. This helps me. Even sometimes I come back to this presentation and some of the links just to ground me again. But my best advice is to always go home, right? Whenever you're lost, go home. So that's kind of my best advice, or to your favorites. One thing I'm working on with the social studies class right now with the high school, especially in remote learning, they're creating their own exhibits, and then they are going in with a screencast and acting as the tour guide. So they have to know their gallery well enough, or their topic well enough, to be able to walk others through that. So that can be a really great way to involve your students. Linking out, grabbing that link, copying that, adding it to your favorites. Those are kind of my tips to keep track of things that you might use. So think of the topics that you have in your class or what you're thinking about, and you can go in and, let's go back. So let's say I wanted to create a new topic around, go back to my favorites. If I wanted to add a new gallery, there's a blue plus sign here, and I can go in and then I can just choose. So let's say if I had a bunch of images on Gettysburg, I could continue, and then I can actually open this link up so that I could share this with my students, put a description there, I'm done. And then that's another gallery that I've started. And I can put as many things in this gallery. So the story on Lincoln, all kinds of things can go in this gallery. So then I have this one place to share with, or one link to share multiple items that might make sense for whatever I'm studying or want my kids to study in class.
So something you might think of in this regard too, and it's just a way for us to consider how we build items, is let's go back to the TPS Teachers Network. If this is your first time joining us, you may not be totally familiar with the Teachers Network, but I want to revisit that. The Library of Congress has a Teachers Network that's national in scope and international. It's free to anybody, and collections and curated discussion groups and ideas are built within there for you. Think about how you can use the TPS Teachers Network and connect it to the Google Arts and Culture piece. Naturally, there are things that you may not be able to find on the Library of Congress, so it might be a really good idea to take a look at both endeavors and see what you can bring together. Because of the shareable link function of the Google Arts and Culture, those links can be shared to help build a more robust collection around baseline Library of Congress collections that you've built in the TPS Teachers Network. So that may be something to think about as you're curating collections there as well. That's a really great landing point for teachers to share ideas that is with the Library of Congress, and Arts and Culture really works with that too.
You could add that link there too. And think of the great partnership that is between the Library of Congress and Google Arts and Culture, really, in terms of primary sources and worldwide access, and the work that museums have done in curating some of these artifacts and images and paintings. So it's a great partnership, and kind of really expands your horizon around any of the topics that you're using in the TPS network.
Yeah, so Laura, we've got one other question. Where do your kids save it? This is cloud-based for them, so it just saves when they log in, correct? But if they want to save individual items, you can download some of those depending on copyright, but most of them are open source, and they can save that in their Google Drive. But this is a cloud-based piece, so your curated collections are actually in the cloud. So you're not going to have to download all of this to your drive. So but if they're individual pieces.
Yeah, they save in their gallery, and actually some of them, you will notice when you get in there, you can't, the items are protected, you can't even take a screenshot of them. So it depends on the item, depends on what you're looking at, but they can all be favorited into their personal gallery in Google Arts and Culture, or they can keep track of the links that are associated with those different artifacts and stories and pictures and everything.
Cool. Well, let's go into, since that kind of leads us into the STEM conversation and back into a little bit of what we want to talk at the end of this piece. And we're going to ask you to join in and have a conversation, because I would be surprised if most of you don't know this image. So I'm going to go back and share my screen, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit different way this time around. So I am thinking that most of you guys probably know this image. And it's pretty familiar, especially for those of you who are studying American history. It is one of the most, along with Washington crossing the Delaware, copied images in American textbooks today. And it's also one that most students are familiar with by the time they get into high school. It's something that is used generally in middle school and high school. But we want to look at it with a bit different lens today. And that's going to lead us into a bit of our last part of our conversation. So right now, if it's possible, it would really be great if you could take a look at this by putting a different lens on. We want you to put on a different hat, and we are going to ask you to think STEM. And so right now, I'd like you to take a close look at this image. You may have seen it before, but this time I'd like you to think about technology. And in the chat room, just pop in and drop some ideas. What do you see in this image that relates to technology? Drop in a word or two and then we'll discuss it. And then I'm going to give you another hat to put on right after that. So think about technology looking at this image and join in the chat and let's see what's there. Trains, transportation, railroad. All right, ships, a plow, great, wires. That often, students often get a little bit confused with that piece. Agriculture could be considered with technology too. Great. Indian village. Stagecoach, good. I haven't seen wagon yet. Is a bison technology? That's an interesting one. It could be connected. Weather, the plow again. Okay. So now I'm going to stop. Take your hands off your keyboard for a second. And oh, travois. That's a lot of people don't pick that one up. So let's take a moment now. And I want you to think about it this way. Instead, take a look at science. How does science relate to this image? And again, in your chat box, go ahead and join in and see what you can put in science. Weather, great. The telegraph. What else? Agriculture, definitely. Curing of the hides. River flow. Oh, that one has not come up, Mary. That's a good one. Climate, the wheel, okay. Steam energy, great. We've also got the difference between a coal, a wood fire, a steam engine. Okay, a sow pack, snowpack. I wondered because I'm looking and going, are there sows in here? I don't see pigs. Well, you know. Okay, animal muscles, deer running free. Okay. Wagon. Nature. I don't know if anybody mentioned habitat yet, but habitat can also be in there. Wagon versus wind energy. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop you for just a second there. As you see, I could take you through all of the different lenses here in regards to STEM. And what we wanted to do today was give you a resource around this, because a lot of times we look at art in the historical sense. We don't always look at it with a STEM lens. A couple of years ago, we had an institute here in collaboration with the Western Museum of American Art, which is right downtown here in Denver, that has a beautiful collection of Western art. And our TPS team worked alongside our curators and our educators from the museum to develop a STEM protocol that really was a thinking like protocol. And we're going to share that with you right now, if that's okay. So what I did is I broke up the protocol for you into 4 different sheets. And what we did is we put them in here as a connection for you. So I'm actually going to click on this science one. You can use this with your students. We put it independently in this Google form linked so that you could see it. And it actually gives you a chance to think about what you would look at something with in regards to the lens of science. So let's take a look at science really quick. What elements of the ecological landscape are present? Did that come out in our chat? What geologic features? I don't know if we saw geology here. If you looked far back in our image, there may have been. Habitats, weather, plants. Is there a scientific cycle happening here? If we went back to our image, we could have possibly seen that. And if you are sitting and looking at this lens, what other questions could you add there? Because in thinking about science, there are so many topics that we study K-12. There are lots of different things that you can do to actually go in and change this. So I want to go back and take a look at another one. I'd like to look at math for a second. We often don't think of art in math, except maybe when we see some symmetry or something else in that regard. But let's take a look here. It'll take a minute to load, but what's the ratio and scale? Perspective. We often forget the perspective piece. Patterns. Is the golden ratio used? Are there geometric shapes? And is this computer created or is it human created? Was a computer used to do this, and do they use math to do it? are, how would you measure distance? What's the scale? You know, as social studies teachers in many of our states, we are required to integrate math into our classroom as a regular standard. So this may be a way that you can actually tackle that math component and get it in. And that's something for us to think about. Also, I'd like to go back for a second too, and here's where that engineering and technology piece are, but I'd like to show you the full sheet. And here is the full sheet right now, so that we're going to bring it up in a PDF. You have access to this. So this sheet can be used in lots of different ways. The sheet is there for you to cut up. You can give the kids one laminated sheet, put it in a page protector, put it at a table and use a Kagan structure to assign one of these lenses to your students around a piece of art or a primary source. Could you cut it up or only assign one lens for a student to view independently in remote learning and then come together into a Zoom environment to share as a group? Could you use one lens in a discussion and then bring that culmination of notes and ideas, illustrations, any of that, annotations, especially if you have a PDF and you want to use Kami or annotate very easily? Could you bring that back together using these as the lenses? We often talk about a lens of a historian. Are you an economist? Are you a citizen? Are you thinking about this as a historian or as a geographer? Maybe we ought to step out of the box and think, how do we look at science? This is a great way also to turn back and think about how we can interdisciplinize the use of primary sources with colleagues who may say, I don't have time to do this. It doesn't tie to my content. We've all heard that. Maybe this is a way to bring that conversation forward. Now, we've also done some thinking around this, and we've given you some ideas. So we've given you the individual sheets on this page, as well as the large sheet. But I challenge you, when you're using a primary source now, to actually think about using it in the STEM lens. And that really goes back to some of the conversation that we had at the very beginning of our presentation tonight, using the HABS, the HAL, the HAIR collections. Because all of those collections can really afford us the opportunity through primary sources to really connect to STEM, to talk about engineering, all those different pieces. And we don't forget about it, but we have to be cognizant of it and conscious of it so that we can bring the interdisciplinary piece together. So I want to go on really quickly right here, and I want to talk about this. So what does STEM mean? What is the use of HABS and HAIR and Google Arts and Culture? It really means that we think for the future. And it really means that we create student dreamers. And I want to talk about that for a second, because this particular project, which is hard to see right here, but I'm going to expand out in just a moment, allows us to really give our students a baseline for research and a baseline for thinking out of the box. And that's what primary sources really are about. And so what I want to do is step out of this for just a moment, and I want to bring it up into this document right here. And I'm hoping you can see it all right. This is a PDF plan, and for those of you who are in Denver, you may or may not recognize it. This is actually Larimer Square. This is down where the walkways in the river are and downtown. This was actually a student project that was a challenge given by developers in downtown Denver for a group of students to redevelop what Writers Square and what Larimer Square looks like for pedestrians and for people who are living there. As some of you may know, Larimer Square is one of the oldest protected historic locations in Denver. And with this, Alex actually used this to create an idea. He went into the HABS collection. He went into Google Arts and Culture. He went into a lot of placemaking idea books to come up with an idea of what place looks like. This is a beginning architecture student who used the Library of Congress collections and used arts and culture and used research materials for planners to redesign what his city is going to look like in the future. And if we scroll up just a bit here, he was required to do some things like include affordable housing, talk about the pedestrian mall and what the park would look like, and what's going to happen with how people actually interact with this space. They weren't given the challenge until they were given the inquiry question. And the inquiry question was, what does this look like in the future? What does your city look like in the future? And so they actually had to apply it. Where did they turn back to? They went to the Library of Congress. So I wanted to share this with you because I wanted to, especially during this time with Teacher Appreciation Week, really talk quickly and make sure that you guys know that everything you're doing with primary sources, everything you're doing with encouraging your students both in the classroom and remotely is giving them the ideas for the future. It may not seem it. It may not seem like it's fruitful at the time. In fact, right now, I know some of us are banging our head against the wall going, just submit the item to Google Classroom. If you could do that, that'd be rock star. But know that you're planting the seeds, and a lot of those seeds come out of historic research, out of inquiry, out of the chance to do something different and use technology and use thought processes like the library advocates for with their collections. They curate collections so that we have millions of items at hand for us. And that's exactly what this is. And that's the basis for this type of project. It may look a little simple, but understand there were hours behind this in HABS and hair. So as we go back to our presentation, I want to just really quickly share a couple other things and let Laura complete some things for you too. We have shared lots of resources with you, both in this presentation, but also on a takeaway. And this takeaway is a built resource page for you that really talks about the slides that are located within our presentation. And in those slides, you'll also find that with the slides, there is some notes. We've listed a few ideas, and then how you may use that with students. How can you access it, use it, discuss it? And there's one more source in here that I want to point out that's a living document. So as we continue to dig around and find great HABS and hair collections, we're also continuing to add to this list. And this list actually has the working really links to the documents that we talked about today, the links to the books, and it's a growing list. As we continue to work with our states and with teachers from across the country, we're adding to this, and we're continuing to put information in there. So as you look at your takeaway list, there's lots of things. Laura has linked all kinds of favorites, historic figures, places, step-by-step ideas, you name it. This is your research page. Laura, I'm turning it back to you. Do you want me to leave it on the share so you can talk about it, or give it to you? I'm happy to do it.
You can give it to me if you want.
All right, I'm gonna stop it and I'm gonna give it to you so you can wrap up because we got about 6 minutes.
Okay, I wanted to share, I wasn't sure if we would have time, but there's one thing that I kind of love that goes with the STEM and the STEAM side of with Google Arts and Culture. And it is bookmarked here and also bookmarked in the takeaway, but Google Arts and Culture has an experiments page, and it's in beta, so everything in here is in beta, but you can go in and try things out. You can have your students try things out. They have curated all of the the photos from Life magazine. You can go in and search by different, I'm trying to see where that one is. There it is, by life tags, and you can launch the experiments. This Spagan series, this was a whole civilization that has kind of gone to ruin, or it's going to ruin, and has been really damaged by earthquakes. But before that all happened, Google was there with their AI team, and you can go see this. So they've really preserved this whole exhibit and this whole civilization. This is kind of, here's one on the first bronze sculpture designed in virtual reality. So I'll just give you a little taste of what this looks like, because I always think of the 6 Degrees with Kevin Bacon on this one, right? So this one goes through with, if you take two pieces of art and you know, what will bring them together? What can you kind of bridge to get those together? So if you go in, and it's telling us about that, then we launch the experiment, talks a little bit. What's the connection between two things for here? Like, so this experiment kind of, it'll go through all the different experiments deal with the artifacts in a different way. So this one I can go through and I can choose, let's say I choose Rita Kala and maybe this space. And then it will discover, it'll take me on kind of a journey to bridge between that. So that's even an amazing journey for kids to go on, or to create some of their own degrees of separation, right? And so all kinds of experiments, some of these experiments are apps on their phones, like this Weird Cuts. But the technology, the engineering, you can go in and just search by art palette. So if I just want to search by the color red, I can go in and find a whole bunch of artifacts and paintings and pictures at just that color. So it's kind of interesting to explore the exhibits or the experiments. This one is brand new, the Harry Potter History of Magic. And they went, Google got involved with this exhibit, and it went around the world and into New York. But Google helped them to create this augmented reality experience around this celestial globe. So they do a video and talk about that. But you can go into the exploration right here. So the British Museum, they went through the Harry Potter books, and then they took the information, they took little excerpts out of the books, and then they found the magic, the history of the magic that goes with that. So you can go in and see those primary sources, study the art, see what's gone on, some of the things she based the magic on. It's really interesting how many primary sources you can find in this exhibit, but here it is, all curated and ready for you in Google Arts and Culture in their experiments section.
Well, and Laura, I just want to say, really, we had to go all the way to New York to see this. We had to book the tickets 6 months in advance to get into the exhibit because we wanted to see it, and then Google throws it all up there. And now
Right?
Arian says it's on PBS too. Boo.
Oh, right? Well,
Yes,
if only I could book a ticket to New York right now.
I know.
But yeah, how fun is that? And then to be there with the tools. So that's a great, so I really like this section, and they're really nice way to take your kids to the STEM ideas too, right? And help them think. And when Michelle's talking about what's next, they could come up with one of these. What would they do? What kind of an experiment would they use with the artifacts and the curation tools?
So Laura, I think that's it. And I don't know, we've loved being with you guys tonight. We're going to leave it for some questions, but we're going to turn it over to Keith and Kyle so that they can wrap it up and you guys can get that all important seat ticket, but that says you were here for an hour listening to the geeks. But at the same time, we want to say thank you. Thank you for being passionate about what you do, spending an hour at the end of your day for teaching as you do in whatever context, and happy Teacher Appreciation Week, sincerely from all of us at Library of Congress. And thank you for doing what you do every single day for students.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, thanks, Laura, and thanks to everybody for attending, and thanks, Michelle and Laura for presenting and providing these awesome strategies and tech tools. Thanks also for Keith for manning the chat room, and to the Library of Congress for making these webinars possible through the Teaching with Primary